The digital clock on the screen flickers, the numbers locking into place at 8 a.m. A sharp rhythmic pulse signals the activation of the English learning module. The room feels suddenly focused, the ambient noise fading into the background as a male voice fills the space. His tone is measured, steady, and precise. A female voice joins him, her cadence welcoming and bright. They speak in tandem, outlining the objective for the session: real-life fluency. They emphasize that today is not about theory, but about the mechanics of conversation. The screen refreshes, displaying the module parameters. The male narrator pauses, his voice dropping slightly in pitch as he adjusts the playback speed to 0.8. The slower tempo hums through the speakers, designed to catch every nuance of the upcoming dialogue. The female narrator confirms the setting, her voice clear and encouraging. The screen shifts, the interface highlighting the first objective. Scenario 1. Meeting at a cafe. The screen transitions, the digital interface dissolving into the warm amber light of a busy cafe. The sound of clinking porcelain and low-frequency chatter rises, filling the audio space. Ali appears at the entrance, his gaze sweeping across the room. Every table is occupied. He shifts his weight, his eyes darting between groups of people, searching for a single open space. He maneuvers through the narrow aisles, carefully avoiding a waiter carrying a tray of steaming drinks. The air is thick with the scent of roasted coffee and the hum of background conversation. He stops, his steps faltering as he scans the far corner. He spots a small table near the window. He navigates the final few feet, the floorboards creaking under his boots. He stops directly in front of the table. Ali stands motionless, the ambient noise of the cafe swirling around him like a tide. He clears his throat, but the sound is swallowed by the clatter of a nearby espresso machine. He shifts his weight, his fingers twitching against the side of his leg. He needs to speak, but the words seem to catch in his chest. He looks down at the table, then back up, his eyes meeting hers for a fraction of a second before he glances away. The silence between them feels heavy. He takes a half step forward, his resolve hardening. He opens his mouth, his voice low and tentative. "Hello, excuse me, is this seat free?" The question hangs in the air, exposed and fragile. He waits, his heart thumping against his ribs, watching her face for any sign of rejection. The second stretches out, the cafe noise fading into a dull roar. Then, she moves. She lifts her gaze from the book, her expression shifting from focused to receptive. She closes the book with a soft thud, the sound marking the end of his uncertainty. She nods, a small, welcoming gesture. "Yes, it is free. You can sit here." The tension breaks, replaced by the immediate, practical reality of the invitation. Ali pulls the chair back, the wooden legs scraping against the floor with a sharp, jarring sound. He sits, leaning forward, to keep his distance from the table, his hands resting on his knees. He takes a steadying breath, the initial rush of nerves beginning to ebb. He looks at her, his posture relaxing as he finds his rhythm. "Thank you. My name is Ali." He offers a slight nod, his gaze steady and polite. Across the table, she shifts her position, adjusting her glasses with a quick, precise movement of her fingers. She offers a smile, the expression softening the lines of her face. "Nice to meet you, Ali. I am Sarah." The air between them feels lighter now, the barrier of the stranger replaced by the structure of a conversation. Ali leans in slightly, his curiosity overcoming his hesitation. "Where are you from?" He waits, watching her reaction, his hands now resting flat on the table surface. She pauses for a heartbeat, considering the question, then answers with a clear, calm tone. "I am from Lahore. And you?" Ali smiles, his shoulders dropping as he settles into the flow of the exchange. "I am from Karachi." The conversation shifts naturally, the initial formalities falling away as they settle into the space. Sarah leans back, her hands resting near her book, and she speaks with a deliberate, rhythmic pace. "I am a student. I study English." Ali listens, his head tilted slightly, processing the words. As the meaning lands, his posture shifts. He leans forward, his hands clasping together on the table, and a sudden brightness enters his eyes. "That is great. I am also learning English." Sarah responds instantly, her face lighting up with a genuine, spontaneous expression. She laughs, a light, clear sound. "Really? That is nice." The connection is no longer just about polite inquiry. It is about a shared path. They both sit straighter, the table between them feeling smaller now, a bridge built on common ground. Ali nods, his eyes fixed on hers, his previous hesitation replaced by a focused, eager intensity. The digital clock on the screen flickers, the numbers shifting as the lesson module advances. A soft chime signals the change. The narrator's voice accelerates, the pace now set to a steady, natural rhythm. Ali watches the screen for a moment, then turns his attention back to Sarah. He listens closely as she describes her one-year journey, his head nodding in time with her words. Her sentences flow without the hesitation that marked their earlier exchange. She speaks with a newfound confidence, her hands gesturing to emphasize her points. Ali leans in, his expression one of genuine admiration. He waits for a natural pause, then speaks with clear, deliberate intent. "You speak very well." The words carry weight, cutting through the background hum of the cafe. Sarah pauses, a pleased smile spreading across her face as she processes the feedback. She looks down at her book, then back at him, her confidence visibly bolstered by the recognition. The air between them feels productive. Ali taps his fingers on the table, his posture relaxed and open. The screen fades to a soft gray, leaving them in the quiet focus of their shared success. The cafe fades into a soft, monochromatic blur, the ambient noise of the coffee shop replaced by the crisp, sterile silence of a new digital module. On the screen, the text Scenario 2 at the clothing store appears in sharp, white letters against a dark background. The scene shifts. A bright, well-lit retail space comes into focus. Rows of metal racks stretch across the frame, packed with items of varying textures. A customer enters the frame from the left, her movements purposeful. She stops near the first rack, her head turning slowly as she surveys the selection. She reaches out, her fingers brushing against the hangers, sliding them along the metal rail with a rhythmic, metallic clicking sound. She pauses, pulling one hanger slightly forward to inspect the material, then pushes it back. Her gaze travels down the length of the aisle. Behind the counter at the far end of the room, a shopkeeper remains still, watching the customer with a neutral, expectant expression. The customer takes a step forward, her posture shifting from casual observation to focused intent. She stops again, her hand hovering over a section of the display. The customer moves toward the counter, her steps echoing slightly in the quiet store. She stops, catching the shopkeeper's attention with a brief nod. "Excuse me, I need a dress." The shopkeeper pivots, walking away from the counter to join the customer near the racks. He gestures toward the shelves, his hands sweeping across the organized rows. "Certainly. What color do you prefer?" The customer looks at the display, her eyes scanning the spectrum of options. She points to two specific sections, black or blue. The shopkeeper reaches out, sliding hangers along the rail until he finds the right items. He pulls a black piece and a blue one from the rack, holding them up for inspection. The customer reaches out, her fingers testing the weight and texture of the black material. She holds it against the light, checking the drape. She turns back to the shopkeeper, her decision made. "Can I try this on?" The shopkeeper nods, pointing toward a door at the back of the store. "The fitting room is right there." The customer takes the black item and walks toward the door. The door to the fitting room clicks shut, sealing the customer in a small, private space. She hangs the black item on a hook, the metal rattling against the wall. She moves with efficiency, sliding the fabric over her shoulders and pulling it down. She turns toward the mirror, her hands moving to smooth the material across her waist and hips. She checks the seams, pulling the fabric taut to ensure there is no bunching or resistance. She rotates, watching the way the light catches the dark surface of the material, observing how it hangs from her frame without pulling or sagging. She pauses, tilting her head to inspect the neckline and the way the sleeves rest against her arms. A small, satisfied nod follows. The fit is precise. She takes a breath, checks the hem one last time, and reaches for the door handle. She pulls it open and steps back out into the main retail area. She stands before the shopkeeper, her posture upright and relaxed. She smooths the front of the material with her palms, the fabric settling into place. "It fits perfectly," she says. The shopkeeper steps forward, his eyes tracking the movement of the fabric as he reaches for the small tag hanging from the sleeve. He turns it over, reading the printed numbers with a practiced, steady gaze. "It is 2,500 rupees, he states, his voice devoid of hesitation. The customer's hands drop from the fabric. She goes still, her posture tightening as the number hangs in the air between them. She reaches out, her fingers brushing the tag, pulling it closer to her face to confirm the figure. She stares at the price, her brow furrowing in a sharp, sudden line of doubt. The silence in the shop deepens. She looks up, meeting the shopkeeper's eyes with a steady, challenging intensity. "That is a bit high," she says. She does not move to take the item off. Instead, she holds her ground, waiting for his response. She shifts her weight, her arms crossing over her chest. The shopkeeper remains behind the counter, his hand resting on the wood, his expression unreadable as he calculates the next move. The shopkeeper does not immediately look away. He keeps his gaze fixed on the customer, his fingers drumming a slow, rhythmic beat against the polished wood of the counter. The sound is sharp, punctuating the silence. He tilts his head, his eyes narrowing as he mentally weighs the value of the sale against the potential loss. He stops tapping, his hand coming to rest flat on the surface. He finally nods, a crisp, decisive movement that breaks the tension. "I can give you 10% off," he says, his voice steady and clear. The customer's expression shifts instantly. The tightness in her shoulders vanishes, replaced by a quick, genuine smile. She exhales, the air leaving her lungs in a long, controlled release. "That sounds fair," she replies, her tone bright and satisfied. She reaches into her bag, her movements fluid and unhurried now that the conflict has resolved. The shopkeeper retrieves a heavy paper bag from beneath the counter, opening it with a snap. He places the item inside, the paper crinkling as he folds the top edge over. He slides the package across the counter toward her. She takes it, the weight of the purchase settling in her hand. The deal is done. The scene shifts, the sterile air of the shop replaced by the warm, savory scent of a busy kitchen. The customer sits at a small, circular table, the wood polished and cool under her palms. Around her, the rhythmic clatter of plates and the low hum of conversation create a new, vibrant atmosphere. She unfolds the menu, her eyes tracing the lines of text as she considers the options. A waiter moves through the crowded floor, his steps measured and purposeful. He carries a small notepad, the paper crisp and ready. He stops at the table, his presence commanding immediate attention. He pulls the pen from behind his ear, the movement fluid and practiced. He looks down at the customer, his expression neutral but attentive. "Welcome," he says, his voice cutting through the ambient noise. "What can I get for you?" The customer looks up from the menu, her focus shifting entirely to the waiter. The customer leans forward, her finger tapping the menu to emphasize her choice. "I would like a chicken burger, please," she says, her voice clear and deliberate. The waiter lowers his head, the tip of his pen scratching against the paper as he records the request. He does not look up, his hand moving with practiced speed. The customer does not stop there, she continues, adding the next layer of her order. "Yes, and a side of fries, plus a medium cold drink." The waiter pauses, his pen hovering for a split second before he continues writing, his movements steady and rhythmic. The list grows, the ink filling the small space on the notepad. The customer watches his hand, ensuring he captures every detail. She then adds one final, specific requirement. "Could I have some ketchup with that?" she asks, her tone polite but firm. The waiter stops writing entirely, looking up to meet her eyes. He nods once, a sharp, professional motion that signals he has processed the entire sequence. "Of course," he replies, his voice steady. I will bring it. He turns the page of his notepad, the sound of the paper flipping echoing slightly. The waiter holds the notepad up, his thumb tracing the lines of text he just recorded. He clears his throat, the sound deliberate as he prepares to verify the request. 1 chicken burger, fries, and a medium drink, he recites, his voice steady and rhythmic. He pauses, his gaze shifting from the paper to the customer, ensuring every detail aligns with her expectations. The customer nods, a small smile appearing as she registers the accuracy of his summary. That is correct, she confirms, her tone satisfied. The waiter taps the top of the notepad with his pen, a final gesture of confirmation. It will be ready in 10 minutes, he adds. The customer leans back, her hands resting on the table as the tension of the ordering process dissipates. The waiter turns, his movements efficient and precise, and begins to walk toward the kitchen area. The customer watches him go, the interaction successfully concluded. She turns her attention to the window. The scene shifts abruptly to a busy street corner, the ambient noise of traffic and distant voices replacing the quiet of the restaurant. A man enters the frame, his pace uneven and his eyes darting across the intersection. He stops near a lamppost, his hands gripping the strap of his bag as he scans the surrounding buildings for a sign or a familiar landmark. He looks left, then right, his brow furrowed in concentration. The flow of pedestrians moves around him, a steady stream of motion that highlights his stillness. He spots a woman walking toward the corner, her stride purposeful and direct. He takes a half step forward, his body language signaling his intent to interrupt her path. He raises a hand, his fingers slightly trembling, and calls out to capture her attention. Excuse me. The woman slows, her momentum shifting as she turns to face him. He takes a deep breath, the urgency of his situation reflected in the tightness of his posture. I am sorry to bother you, he continues, but I am lost. He gestures vaguely toward the maze of streets behind him, his frustration evident in the sharp, jerky movement of his arm. The man stands rooted to the sidewalk, the city noise swirling around him like a tide. He shifts his weight from one foot to the other, his eyes locked onto the woman with an intensity that borders on desperation. He checks his watch, the movement sharp and frantic, then looks back up, his jaw set. I need to find the hospital, he says. He takes a step closer, his hands balling into fists at his sides, the knuckles white against his skin. He scans the road ahead, his gaze searching for any sign of medical signage, but the horizon remains a blur of storefronts. He turns back to the woman, his breathing shallow and quick. Is it far? He asks, his voice rising slightly. He waits, his entire body poised for her reply, the seconds stretching out as he holds his breath. He watches her face, searching for any flicker of reassurance, his muscles coiled tight as he prepares for the news. The woman lifts her hand, pointing a steady finger down the long stretch of the road. Go straight, she says, her voice calm and measured. Then turn right at the corner. The man tracks the direction of her gesture, his eyes following the line of the street until they find the distant intersection. She holds his gaze, her expression unhurried. No, it is not far, she adds. It is only 5 minutes away. The words land like a weight being lifted from his chest. The man's shoulders, previously hunched and rigid, drop several inches. He lets out a long, audible breath, a sharp hiss of air that signals the sudden exit of his panic. His hands, which had been clenched white, relax, his fingers uncurling against the side of his bag. He blinks, the frantic energy in his eyes replaced by a look of clarity. The surrounding roar of the city seems to soften, losing its aggressive edge as the immediate threat of being lost dissolves. He nods, once, then twice, the movement slow and deliberate. Thank you so much, he says, his voice steady now, the tremor gone. He stands taller, his posture losing its defensive crouch. The woman offers a brief, reassuring smile. You are welcome, she replies, her tone final and kind. The man shifts his weight, his feet now pointed toward the path she described. The man remains on the corner, the initial rush of relief settling into a quiet focus. He looks down the street, his eyes tracing the path he has just been given. A thought flickers across his face, a small crease appearing between his brows as he remembers another necessity. He shifts his bag, the strap sliding against his shoulder, and turns back to the woman. His movements are no longer frantic, they are measured and deliberate. He takes a half step forward, his head tilted slightly as he prepares to speak again. The hesitation that marked his earlier approach is gone. He clears his throat, his gaze meeting hers with a newfound clarity. "Excuse me," he begins, the words flowing with ease. "Is there a pharmacy nearby?" He waits, his posture relaxed, his hands resting naturally at his sides. He is no longer the lost traveler stumbling through the crowd. He watches the woman, his ears tuned to her response, his mind already processing the potential directions. The city noise continues to pulse around them. He holds his position, ready to receive the final piece of information he needs to complete his journey. The woman does not hesitate. She lifts her arm, extending her index finger to point toward a glass-fronted building just visible past the intersection. "Yes," she says, her voice clear and resonant. "It is right next to the hospital." She holds the gesture, ensuring he follows the line of her sight. The man turns his head, his eyes locking onto the structure she indicated. He nods, a sharp, decisive movement that signals the final piece of his mental map has fallen into place. He looks back at her, his face lit with a genuine, unburdened smile. "Thank you," he says, the words crisp and perfectly articulated. The ambiguity that had plagued his morning is entirely gone. He checks the street once more, his confidence now absolute. He takes a deep breath, his chest expanding fully, and shifts his weight forward, ready to execute the path he has learned. The woman lowers her hand, her expression one of satisfied completion. She nods once, acknowledging his success. The man adjusts his bag, the strap settling firmly against his frame, and he begins to walk, his stride purposeful and rhythmic. The city noise fades, replaced by the soft, rhythmic ticking of a wall clock. The scene transitions to a quiet living space, where the light filters through a window, casting long, steady shadows across the floor. A man and a woman sit across from each other, the tension of the street replaced by a calm, domestic stillness. The man pulls his chair closer to the table, the wood scraping lightly against the floor. He rests his hands on the surface, his posture relaxed and open. The woman leans forward, her attention entirely on their exchange. She begins the conversation, her voice low and steady in the quiet room. "What time do you wake up?" she asks. The man shifts his weight, looking at her with a thoughtful expression. He pauses for a heartbeat, considering the rhythm of his own life. "I wake up at 7 a.m., he replies, his tone measured and clear. The woman nods, acknowledging the information, and continues the inquiry. "What do you do in the morning?" she asks. The man traces the edge of the table with his finger. "I have breakfast," he says. "Then I go to my office." The conversation shifts. The woman pulls her hands back from the table, interlacing her fingers as she changes her posture. She tilts her head slightly, her eyes searching his face with a new intensity. The air in the room seems to grow still. She breaks the rhythm of their previous exchange, moving past the simple facts of his morning. "Do you like your job?" she asks. The question hangs in the space between them, stripping away the comfort of their earlier routine. The man stops tracing the table. He lifts his head, his gaze meeting hers directly. He does not answer immediately. He shifts his weight, the chair creaking. He looks toward the window, then back to her, his brow furrowing as he weighs the reality of his work against the words he needs to find. The question has clearly caught him off guard, forcing him to reach deeper. He takes a slow, measured breath, his chest rising. The woman remains motionless, waiting, her expression patient but expectant. The room feels smaller now, the focus entirely on the man. The man finally breaks the silence. He nods firmly, a sudden clarity washing over his features. The hesitation from moments ago evaporates. "Yes," he says, his voice steady and resonant. I enjoy it very much. He leans forward, his hands now resting flat on the table, signaling his comfort with the topic. He explains how the work challenges him, how each day provides a new puzzle to solve. The woman listens, her expression softening into a smile. She asks about his life outside the office, wondering how he fills the remaining hours of his day. The man smiles, a genuine, wide expression that reaches his eyes. In my free time, he begins, his cadence smooth and deliberate. I watch movies and practice my English. He gestures with his hand, describing the way he repeats phrases and mimics the rhythm of the speakers he hears on screen. It is a moment of visible growth. He is no longer just reciting facts. He is sharing his aspirations. The room feels lighter, the tension replaced by a shared sense of progress. He looks at the woman, his confidence evident in the way he holds her gaze. He has moved past the struggle, his speech now flowing with a natural, practiced ease. The environment shifts. The interior light fades, replaced by the soft, natural glow of a park entrance. Green trees frame the background, and the sound of distant birds replaces the quiet of the office. The man walks into the frame, his pace measured and deliberate. He spots the woman standing near the gate, looking at the path ahead. He slows his stride, his hands moving to his sides as he adjusts his posture. He stops a few feet away, catching her attention. She turns, her expression shifting from observation to recognition. The man clears his throat, a subtle sign of the importance he places on the next few words. He shifts his weight, his eyes scanning the space between them before meeting her gaze. He does not rush. "Do you have plans for the weekend?" he asks. The question is direct. He stands still, his attention focused on her. The wind stirs the leaves above, but the space between them remains fixed. The woman does not answer immediately. She reaches into her bag, her fingers brushing against the texture of her notebook. She pulls it out, the soft sound of pages turning echoing against the quiet of the park entrance. She opens to the current month, her eyes scanning the grid of dates. The man watches her, his posture rigid, his breath held in a brief, silent pause. She traces a line with her index finger, moving from Friday to Sunday, her brow furrowing slightly as she calculates her obligations. The suspense hangs in the air, a tangible weight between them. She flips a page, then stops. Her finger rests on the empty space of the weekend. She looks up, the intensity in her gaze softening into a clear, bright focus. The uncertainty of the last few seconds vanishes. She closes the book, the snap of the cover signaling her decision. "No," she says, her voice steady and welcoming. "I am free." She smiles, a genuine expression that mirrors the warmth of the afternoon light. She tucks the book away, her movements fluid and relaxed. The man nods, his shoulders relaxing as the path forward clears. He gestures toward the sprawling green space behind the gate. "Would you like to go to the park?" he asks. The invitation is simple, yet it carries the weight of their entire journey. She does not hesitate. "That sounds lovely," she replies, her voice carrying a note of genuine interest. They both shift their focus to the practicalities of the meeting. The man lifts his wrist, checking the time against the fading afternoon sun. She follows suit, tapping the face of her watch to ensure it is accurate. They stand in the quiet, the logistics settling into place. "Let us meet at 5 p.m., she suggests, her tone firm and decisive. He mirrors her confidence, his head dipping in a sharp, affirmative motion. "Perfect," he says. "See you then." The air between them feels lighter, the uncertainty replaced by the clarity of a shared commitment. They stand for a moment longer, the goal achieved, the language used not just as a tool for study, but as a bridge to a real-world connection. The weight of the planning lifts, leaving a comfortable stillness in the air. They stand at the park entrance, the agreement solidifying the end of their exchange. The man shifts his weight, his hands coming to rest at his sides, his posture signaling the end of the encounter. He looks at her, his expression open and appreciative. "It was nice talking to you," he says, the words measured and sincere. The woman returns his gaze, her head tilting slightly in acknowledgement. She mirrors his tone, her voice soft but clear. "It was a pleasure," she responds. A brief silence follows, not of uncertainty, but of mutual respect. They do not turn away immediately. Instead, they hold the moment, acknowledging the successful bridge they have built through their conversation. The man offers a final nod, his movements deliberate. "Take care," he adds, his voice carrying a note of genuine warmth. She smiles. A final, lingering expression that seals the interaction. "You too," she replies. They both take a half step back, the physical distance between them widening. They turn, their movements synchronized in their departure, leaving the space behind them quiet and resolved. The lesson has reached its natural, polite conclusion. The screen shifts, the park scene dissolving into the clean, structured interface of the learning module. The male narrator's voice returns, steady and composed. "Today we moved beyond the textbook," he states, his tone marking the transition from practice to reflection. The female narrator joins him, her voice bright and encouraging. "From the cafe to the street corner, you navigated real-world interactions with growing confidence." The digital clock on the screen pulses, a reminder of the time invested in these exchanges. They highlight the key milestones. The male narrator pauses, allowing the weight of these achievements to settle. Fluency is not just about vocabulary, it is about the rhythm of connection. The screen displays a summary of the scenarios covered, each one a building block for the next stage of the journey. The female narrator concludes with a note of validation. "You have turned hesitation into action," she says. "Each sentence you spoke today is a step toward total command of the language. The technical interface serving as a testament to the progress made." The interface remains on screen for a final moment, the text glowing softly against the dark background. The male narrator speaks one last time, his voice calm and resonant. "The foundation is set," he says. The female narrator adds a final note of encouragement. "Carry these conversations with you," she says, "and use them whenever the moment arises." The digital clock, which has tracked every second, begins to dim. The numbers flicker, then vanish into the shadows of the screen. The menu options and progress bars slowly recede, leaving only a deep, clean void. The silence in the room deepens, matching the darkening display. There is no sudden cut, only a gradual, deliberate retreat of the light. The screen becomes a mirror, reflecting the stillness. Every interaction settles into memory. The last hint of illumination fades from the edges, the pixels turning off. The screen is now completely black. The lesson is finished. The tools are in hand. The silence holds for a final beat.